Hey guys, we're back and we're talking about Moonlight Seduction by Jennifer Armentrout. This is the second DeVincent Brothers novel. So there's three DeVincent brothers. Devlin, the oldest, Gabe, the middle, and Lucian, the youngest. So the first book, Moonlight Sins, is Lucian's book. The second book, Moonlight Seduction, is Gabe's book. And the third book, I'm thinking, is Devlin's book, which is Moonlight Scandal, I believe. So it's 387 pages. So it's a good, it's a good size. It is a contemporary romance with a thriller. So I am not a fan of romance. I know, boo me. I have read some romance novels that I really love that have made me sob like a baby. It's just not usually my typical genre that I like to read. I like fantasy, paranormal, something where somebody's trying to kill somebody, which you have in this book. So that's why I like it. So I gave it a 5-star on Goodreads. It is the story of Nick and Gabe. So Nick is the daughter of Richard and Livy, the people who are the caretakers of the DeVincent household. And Nick and Gabe have a history and some tension. And they work through that history and that tension and go through some things and come out the other side of those things. And they end up working it all out. And there is a happily ever after. And yes, my people, there is smut. Yes, there is. So with that said, that's our brief synopsis. We will get down to the nitty gritty or the spoilers. So the book starts off like 8 years ago, I think. Nikki's like 12 years old or something. And Nikki is basically grows up at the DeVincent house because her parents work there. And they're in Louisiana and there's a pool. So Nick is in the pool. Nick cannot swim. Yeah, I know, right? Like, you're like, well, girl, if you can't swim, why are you in the pool, right? But I can't really judge because this one has done plenty of things that could have resulted in severe injury, hospitalization, and or death. So, this is the judgment-free zone, Nikki. So, Nick is in the pool, okay? She is cooling off because it's Louisiana, it's hot. And the DeVincent brothers come out. And so now she's stuck in the pool. And she is, because she can't swim, she's like, holding on to the edge and peeping at the DeVincent brothers. And a storm comes up. And so she realizes she needs to get out of the pool. And so she's like edging her way down the pool to get to the ladder to get out when lightning strikes right as she's climbing out of the pool. And she screams and falls back in the water and almost drowns. But Gabe saves her. So that's the opening of the book. So we switch to present day, and Gabe is meeting with Emma's parents. Now, if you remember from book 1, Emma is the girl that he dated in college. She was attacked and raped. He and his brothers killed the guy that raped her. And years later, she and Gabe reconnected. And she had a kid she didn't tell him about. So he's in Baton Rouge meeting Emma's parents and his son and spending time with him. And when he goes to leave the restaurant, this reporter named Ross Haid comes up and tries to get some information from him, which he doesn't give him. And basically tells him, dude, back off. So it switches point of view. The point of view switches between the two of them. So it switches point of view to Nick. So Nick, like I said, grew up in the DeVincent household because her parents run the household there. She went off to college for social work. She has graduated college. She has come home. She was trying to decide if she wanted to go on to grad school or start working as a social worker. So when she come home, they found out that Livy, her mom, has cancer. So Livy is having to go for treatments and stuff. She needs time to rest. And so Nick is filling in for Livy at the DeVincent household because the DeVincents are curious as all get out. And nobody can work for them or wants to because the house is haunted. So she's literally her first day at work. She's wearing a t-shirt and jeans because she's cleaning the house. And Dev comes in and tells her that she needs to wear more appropriate clothing and stay away from Gabe because Dev's a jerk. It's been established. So Later on, while she's in the kitchen, Gabe comes in and he's like, we need to talk. And he gets all up in her space because he's a defensive. That's what they do. So he asks her if he hurt her. And you're like, wait, what? So apparently, before Nick left for college, and she was 18, y'all, because there's apparently quite an age difference. I don't know the exact age difference, but she's 22. She just graduated college, and I think Gabe is 30 or over 30. So there's an 8-year age difference. So apparently, before she left for college, when she was 18, she and Gabe hooked up. Yeah. And Gabe was drunk. And she was holding a V card that Gabe did not know about that she then gave to Gabe. And there was some blood on the sheets, and he was drunk, so he can't remember everything. So he's asking her, did I hurt you? And, she's like, no, you didn't hurt me, and I'm so sorry. Because basically she kind of, I don't want to say trapped him, because that sounds terrible, because he weren't completely out of it. But anyway, he was drunk. The next morning he called her Emma and like told her she was a horrible person, and she ran out crying, and they haven't talked to each other since until she came work at his house. So the conversation ends with him saying, and this is Gabe, and this is a quote from Gabe, I don't want anything to do with you, and I want you to stay the hell away from me. Yeah. So he's a jerk while she's serving dinner, like knocking silverware off the table. I mean, just being a jerk, okay? And she's leaving the house because she's like, this terrible first day, and could it be any worse? And why am I doing this? And then there's a flipping car following her on her way home. Follows her all the way to her parents' street, but does not follow her all the way to her parents' house. So the next day, while she's placing flowers in some of the rooms, somebody pushes her down the stairs. Yeah. And she gets knocked out or whatever. Gabe finds her, takes care of her, calls the doctor. A few days later, while Nick is cleaning, Parker, who is Sabrina's brother, Sabrina is Devlin's fiance, comes in and basically asks her to hook up. Gabe comes in and interrupts and is a jerk to Nick again. And Nick gives it back to him. Good for you, girl. So later on, while Nick is stocking towels in the sauna, which, you live in Louisiana, you really need a sauna? Anyway, she's stocking towels in the sauna, and Gabe comes in and is being a turd again, and she calls him on it. So later on, like that weekend or whatever, she goes out with her friend Rosie, which I love Rosie. So Rosie is like this kind of like free spirit chick. She does ghost tours and stuff. She hosts ghost tours. She's the tour guide. So anyway, she's out with her friend Rosie. They're drinking. And Rosie tells her, she's like, girl, like, quit beating yourself up. You made a mistake when you were 18 years old. Like, seriously, you didn't kill somebody. It's fine. So the next morning, her dad wakes her up and is like, you got a visitor. And it is none other than Gabe. So they're outside talking. Gabe actually apologizes. Yes, a DeVincent brother apologized. Yes. I know, right? Shock face. So he actually apologizes and says that he wants to be friends. But before they can finish the conversation, Nick realizes what time it is, and she's like, I gotta go. So she goes in the house and takes a shower and changes clothes. And when she's getting ready to get in her car, there's Gabe. And he's like, I know you're getting ready to go volunteer at the dog shelter, and I'm going to drive you so we can finish our conversation. They literally get right down the road, like not even a few blocks from her house, and the freaking passenger side window explodes. Yes. So he takes her back home. He takes the car to the garage. His friend Troy, who's the detective, shows up at the garage and is like, I don't think this is an accident, dude. So there's all this weird stuff that is happening that involves Nick. Okay. So later, Devlin is gone to Houston for some sort of charity event. And Julia is like, you know what? I'm cooking dinner. We're all going to have dinner together. So Julia, Lucian, Nick, and Gabe all sit down and have dinner together. And Lucian tells Nick everything that happened with his sister and his dad and all that stuff. Book 1, basically. So later on, Nick finds Gabe in the rec room, and she hugs him and is like, I'm so sorry for everything you've been through. And so the next night, Parker and Sabrina, Dev comes home, and Parker and Sabrina come over for dinner. And Parker is being a really creepy jerk face. And he actually corners Nick in the pantry, I think, and threatens her parents' jobs. Yeah, I mean, he's a creepy dude. So Gabe takes her to the warehouse. This is later, of course. Gabe takes her to the warehouse where he does his, Gabe makes handmade furniture and makes a lot of money off of it. And so he's got a warehouse where he does all his woodworking. And he takes her there and actually shows her that he set up a space for her because he showed her how to do woodworking like a long time ago when she was a little kid. And it was something that they used to do together and that she really enjoyed but has not been doing since their little incident. So he sets her up a space at the warehouse. So a few days later, Gabe actually takes Nick out for lunch and is basically telling her to stay away from Sabrina because she's crazy. And they start talking about stuff and they talk about relationships, and he tells her about Emma and that he'll always love Emma. And then later on, when they're at the warehouse, he actually opens up about Emma and tells her that Emma passed away. But he doesn't tell her about his child. Yeah. So anyway, they start kind of flirting with each other and doing things. And so there's some flirting going on in the shop. And then the next night in the kitchen. And then he finds out that she has a date with this guy named Gerald. And he is not happy about it. But before he can finish the conversation, Sabrina comes in and is like, oh, I need you to carry a painting upstairs to Devlin's office. So Nick goes on the blind date that Rosie set her up with. And while she's talking to the guy at the restaurant, Gabe shows up, and come to find out, Gerald is actually Ross, the reporter, and he says he wasn't, but I mean, you kind of feel like, dude, you were using Nick to see if you get some dirt on the DeVincents. So anyway, the date is over, obvi, and Gabe is taking her back to his car in the parking garage, and they actually have a conversation with extra sauce about their feelings. And it's it's a good conversation. Page 225 is the start of this month. So anyway, days later, Gabe shows up at Ross's house and hits him in the face and tells him to stay away from Nick and threatens him. Nick gets an apartment that she had applied for, and Gabe actually gifts her some of his handmade furniture. And he takes her on a date at the Firestone restaurant, the fancy restaurant Lucian took Julian to celebrate. And he takes her up to the roof where the cabanas are, and they're in a cabana making out, and Devlin shows up. And so Nick has to escape. And her feelings are hurt, obviously, because she feels like, Gabe is hiding her. And you can't really blame her. So she is ignoring his calls and texts and avoiding him at the house. And finally, he finds her at the workshop, and they make up. Yes. So later, Nick is carrying towels to Gabe's room, and freaking cray Sabrina is in his shower while he's not there. Yeah. So Sabrina, who's a witch with a B, is nasty to Nick and tells him about Gabe's kid and actually threatens her. And she doesn't come out and say it, but she insinuates she's the one that pushed Nick down the stairs. Yeah. So Nick goes running out of the house because she's upset that Gabe didn't tell her about his kid. I think at first she thinks it's all a lie. It's just Sabrina being nasty. And then she runs into Gabe. And Gabe tells her it's not a lie. And her feelings are obviously hurt. And Gabe, instead of like coming clean and being like, I'm sorry, I should have told you, he's a giant douche canoe. Like huge. Like I even wrote it huge. Like anyway, he's a jerk face. And she lets him hold it, as well she should. And if y'all don't know what that means, it's like you tell them what you think and then you walk off and let them hold on to it and think about it for a minute. So Nick storms off, and Gabe confronts Sabrina, who then threatens Nick. So then he threatens Sabrina. And later on, I think the next day or something, Nick is cleaning up, and Parker comes in and corners her in a room again. And she tells him to leave, and he won't. And she threatens to call the police. So he grabs her and is threatening her when Gabe shows up. Gabe chokes him and beats him up. Parker runs off. He checks on Nick, who then gives it to him good. She's like, why do you even care? You know? So later, Nick is moving into her apartment, and Rosie is helping her. When they get done, Rosie leaves. And so Nick is folding up towels, putting up stuff, you know, unpacking. And she hears the door. And she goes out in the hallway, and there's a freaking dude in a ski mask in the hallway. Yeah. So she goes running in the bedroom, shuts the door. But of course, just like in a good horror movie, that don't work, because he just beats the flipping door down. So he comes in her room. He attacks her. He tries to rape her. She's fighting, and she gets loose and gets to the hallway. He grabs her again, and he's beating her up and choking her. So she goes for his eyes and pulls the mask off, and it's Parker. And Parker says, I told her we should have done the same thing we did to Emma, but 2 car wrecks would have been suspicious. She gets away again and gets to the kitchen, and she had her woodworking tools on the counter, and she grabs her chisel, and like as she turns around with the chisel, Parker is coming at her at the same time, and the chisel goes in his chest, and Parker's dead. I'm sorry, that's terrible, but it's not. So she calls 911 and calls Gabe and gets no answer from Gabe. So we switch point of view to Gabe. He's talking to Devlin and tells Devlin everything that happened. And Devlin tells him that he knew Sabrina was chasing Gabe, but she knew that they had killed that guy that attacked Emma. So he figured by keeping her close, he could keep an eye on her. But obviously it's over now. And then Lucian comes in while they're talking and says, hey, look, Nick's at the hospital. She's been attacked. So Nick is at the hospital. She has not called her family because she doesn't want them to freak out because of everything her mom is going through and everything her dad is going through. So Gabe shows up, and he's talking to her, and she tells him what Parker said. So when she dozes off, he goes down the hallway to a private room to talk to his brothers and tell them what's going on. Well, while he's gone, old girl calls Rose. She weren't asleep. Nope. So while he's gone, she calls Rosie and has Rosie to pick her up, and she checks herself out of the hospital. So Rosie gets her back to her apartment and gets her in the bed and gets her asleep. And about that time, of course, freaking Dev and Gabe show up. And Rosie gives Gabe hell, as well she should, because who wouldn't, right? You'd be like, look, you've been giving my girl to run around. You've been stringing her along. Like, are you going to quit being a jerk face? Because if you're not, you ain't coming in this house to talk to her. So she gives Gabe hell. And then Dev starts up with her, and she's like, oh, you can have some too if you want some. So she's giving Dev hell after she lets Gabe in the apartment. And I think there's a spark between her and Dev. Anyway, so Gabe comes in and wakes Nick up, and he confesses what a giant turd he has been. And he actually asks her to come back with him to his apartment in the mansion, and she agrees, and she calls her parents, and they come over to see her, and they're understandably upset. Richard, her father, is talking to Gabe and kind of having the what are your intentions with my daughter talk, and Gabe actually passes the test. So later, Gabe and Nick, once they're alone, actually have the conversation, and you know, if you read books, what that conversation is. It's we actually love each other, and let's actually tell each other instead of doing all this other dumb stuff we've been doing, instead of actually having a conversation. So they have the conversation, and they start a relationship, a real one this time, where they're not hiding out from everybody. And her mama kind of has a come to Jesus meeting with Gabe. So the next day, Gabe actually takes Nick to Baton Rouge to meet his son, William, and they have their happily ever after. So it was a really good book, and I really enjoyed it. And I will tell you, so this is my theory, and I know I didn't mention it, but I'll just tell you now. Oh, and by the way, Sabrina apparently it gets away. So we don't even know where Sabrina's at. But okay, so here's my weird theory. At some point during the book, the senator, Stefan, is meeting with Devlin, and Nick brings them a tray of drinks. And the senator says something to Nick about she's still making noise. Now, Nick says that Stefan never cared about noise. It was Lawrence, their dad, that had the problem with noise. So here's what I think. I think, and you should probably turn it off now if I'm right and you don't want to know, which I don't know if I'm right because I haven't read the third book. I think that the guy that they found in the office in book 1 was actually Stefan, not their dad, because they were identical twins. I think the dad killed Stefan to take his place as senator because it would give him more power, and that he's not dead at all. And I don't know if any of the boys know it, but it was just weird because he said something to Nick about making noise, and we know that Lawrence was always funny about nobody making noise in the house. So anyway, so that's Moonlight Seduction, and the next one will be Moonlight Scandals, which will be our next video. So thanks, you guys. Till next time.